The 1988 comedy classic Coming to America starring Eddie Murphy stole the spotlight with its hilarious scenes, charming romance, and unforgettable characters. It wasn't just a box office hit, it became a pop culture legend, still quoted and rewatched decades later. But what happened to the talented cast who brought this royal love story from Zamunda to Queens to life? In this 2025 update, we revisit the stars you loved, revealing where they are now, how their careers evolved, and the surprising paths some have taken. From Hollywood icons to quiet lives away from the spotlight, discover what became of the faces that made Coming to America truly unforgettable. James Earl Jones was born on January 17, 1931, and portrayed King Jaffa Joffer in 1988 at age 57. On screen, he was the immovable monarch of Zamunda, majestic, implacable and yet capable of a single devastating tenderness, and Jones's baritone made every line feel like law. The king's rigid protocol and secret capacity for mercy anchored the film's emotional heart and made audiences willingly fear and love him in the same breath. His childhood reads like origin story for that voice abandoned by his parents and raised by relatives who derided him. He developed a crippling stutter and spent years mute until a teacher pushed him toward poetry and the stage. That early silence hardened him and taught him to make every syllable count. His rise was hard-scraped early stage rejections, racial gatekeeping in mid-century American theater, and the gut punch of being sidelined in film casting because producers couldn't see past type. The career highs, Tony Awards, a lifetime of lauded performances, and the roles that cemented him as cultural royalty sat beside quieter, bitter facts for decades. His voice, which became a global brand, was under-leveraged financially. Famously, he received only $7,000 for the original Darth Vader voice work, a contractual oversight that haunted industry conversations about performers' worth. Personal life held its own wounds. 2 marriages, his long partnership with Cecilia Hart was beloved, but marked by long tours and absences, the grief of losing loved ones, and private health battles later in life. Stability came late as steady theater work and prudent real estate choices created a bulwark against Hollywood's volatility. His estate, built on decades of stage, screen, and voice royalties, was widely reported to be substantial, around $40 million at death, reflecting both accumulated honors and the rare financial prudence of an artist who rarely flaunted wealth. He died on September 9, 2024, at age 93, at his home, leaving behind a complicated, almost mythic legacy. The voice that defined characters across generations, the man who turned early trauma into a lifetime of authority, and an estate that finally matched the cultural capital he'd spent a lifetime earning. Madge Sinclair was born on April 28, 1938, and portrayed Queen Eolion in 1988 at age 50. In the film, she was the soft power behind the throne, dignified, luminous, and morally anchored, her quiet strength humanizing the royal household and giving the script its conscience. Audiences felt the Queen's warmth as a corrective to the excesses of power. Sinclair's early life in Kingston stitched together intelligence and reserve. A teacher by training, she faced a conservative culture that often minimized women's ambitions, and she secretly carried the sting of relatives who equated theatrical aspiration with impracticality. In Hollywood, her ascent was both extraordinary and bruising, typecasting frequent small roles that failed to reflect her range, and the constant necessity of proving a Black Caribbean woman's seriousness in an industry slow to credit gravitas. Her career was punctuated by a brilliant but bittersweet apex and Emmy for Gabriel's Fire, and by the cruel reality that many larger commercial roles eluded her because executives doubted whether audiences would accept her as a romantic or central lead. Off-camera, Sinclair kept scandal at bay, but not sorrow. 2 marriages, one that ended in divorce, and the demands of motherhood amid long shoots took a toll. Friends remember a woman whose public calm masked private fatigue. She fought leukemia for 13 years, and that prolonged struggle eroded both energy and opportunities. When she died on December 20th, 1995 at 57 in Los Angeles, her public legacy towered, yet her financial footprint remained modest. No lavish estates, recorded only the enduring cultural capital of performances that opened doors for Caribbean and Black actresses to come. Her life was therefore a study in paradox, a queen in art, a working mother in life whose real triumph was breaking ceilings rather than building fortunes. Calvin Lockhart was born on October 18, 1934, and portrayed Colonel Izzy in 1988 at age 54. As Colonel Izzy, he was audacious, loud, and theatrically hungry, an outsized presence whose bluster provided comic pressure against Zamunda's formality. Lockhart turned buffoonery into texture, giving the role a bruised human ambition that audiences both laughed at and pitied. His childhood in Nassau, one of many siblings in a household of limited means, pushed him toward performance as a way out. He left for New York carrying both craft and the humiliation of working menial jobs while auditioning. Lockhart caught fire in the 1970s with roles in blaxploitation and socially conscious films, parlaying charisma into a brief period of stardom. But when that wave receded, he encountered a Hollywood that rapidly deselected him, diminishing offers roles that reduced him to type, and the frustration of watching younger faces ascend while he was boxed into caricature. The sharpest career blow was the slow invisibility of the 1980s and 90s projects that promised a comeback fizzled, and television producers often wrote his characters out, rather than invest in complexity and industry rejection that left him adrift. His personal life was turbulent. Multiple marriages and the strain of family estrangement are part of the record, and reports of health decline and financial pressures circulated in his later years. He turned to community theater and anti-drug advocacy back home as a way to reclaim purpose. Lockhart died on March 29, 2007 at 72 in Nassau from stroke-related complications, leaving no blockbuster fortune. His estate was modest, composed of occasional residuals, personal effects, and a small property back in the Bahamas, an emblem of a once heady talent worn down by an industry that consumes and forgets. Louie Anderson was born on March 24, 1953, and played Maurice in Coming to America in 1988 at age 35. Maurice is the eager, naive heart of McDowell's comic relief with a tender center, and Anderson's performance made the character both laughable and deeply human. His childhood in St. Paul, one of 11 children in a household scarred by poverty and an alcoholic, abusive father, was the raw material for a career built on empathy and self-mockery. He turned those wounds into writing cartoons and the warm confessional style that became his signature. Professionally, he climbed from club stages to network TV, creating Life with Louie, headlining long Las Vegas residencies, and later winning a Primetime Emmy for Baskets, but success did not come without uglier detours. Beginning in 1997, he was the target of an extortion scheme in which a man tried to blackmail him with a fabricated scandal. The case became federal, and the extortionist was ultimately prosecuted and imprisoned, an ugly episode Anderson handled largely out of the limelight, yet which left a clear psychological cost. Another public blow was the end of his run as Family Feud host in 2002, a high-visibility job that once gone narrowed mainstream platforms and steady income. He kept intimate relationships private, 2 brief marriages and no children, and channeled family trauma into books and stage work that helped him process pain. After battling cancer privately for years, he entered treatment and died on January 21st, 2022 at 68 in Las Vegas from complications of diffuse large B-cell lymphoma. At his death, his estate was estimated to be around $10 million, a sum built from decades of stand-up television pay publishing and Vegas residencies. The neat number of a net worth estimate sits beside a more complicated reality, a comic who converted private scars into public laughter, who weathered blackmail and professional setbacks, and who left a generous, complicated legacy behind the jokes. John Amos was born on December 27, 1939, and played Cleo McDowell in Coming to America in 1988 at age 49. Cleo is the blunt, principled small business owner whose weary dignity and sharp humor humanized the film's comic set pieces, and Amos's performance made that moral center feel lived and earned. He came from Newark in East Orange, where early instability, athletic promise, and occasional rejection pushed him toward acting as a way to remake himself. His resume roots good times. The West Wing reads like American TV history, but Amos was famously unwilling to let roles flatten Black experience, and that insistence produced both respect and the professional handicap of being labeled difficult in TV corridors. He walked away from work that he felt misrepresented people he cared about, and that principled stance sometimes closed doors. In later years, family strife and financial fragility made uncomfortable headlines. Public disputes between his children, a GoFundMe episode, and concerns about his care surfaced long before his death, exposing vulnerabilities fans rarely saw. Reporting after his passing also highlighted the surprising modesty of his financial estate. Several outlets estimated his net worth at a level far below what many would expect from a half-century career, a shocking footnote to a man whose cultural impact outpaced his bank account. He died on August 21st of 2024 at 84 in Inglewood, California. A death certificate lists congestive heart failure, and the circumstances of his final months reopened conversation about elder care family conflict and how veteran actors are supported when the work thins. Amos's life reads as a study in paradox, towering, principled performances that reshaped representation on screen, shadowed by private and financial fragility few expected. Don Ameche was born Dominic Felix Amici on May 31, 1908, and reprised the cameo of Mortimer Duke in Coming to America, 1988, at age 80. A knowing wink to audiences that connected Coming to America to the world of trading places and reminded viewers of Ameche's long arc from vaudeville and radio to Oscar-winning comeback. Mortimer's comic fallibility and surviving charm mirrored the affable, urbane screen persona Ameche had refined for half a century. Ameche's childhood in Kenosha, as the son of an Italian immigrant, was austere. One of many siblings navigating immigrant money struggles and the responsibilities of work and school, and that early scarcity pushed him towards steady, pragmatic career choices. Radio stardom in the 1930s, a studio contract, Broadway television, and finally a late-life film renaissance. His career was studded with triumphs, an Academy Award for Cocoon in 1986 after a celebrated revival in Trading Places, but also a sharp undercurrent of professional disillusionments, studio politics that shelved projects he cared about. The 1950s tumble, when many classical stars were written off and the private cost of a marriage strained by long absences. He and his wife Honorée were long married but separated late in life, and accounts note tensions, including his absence from her funeral, that added personal sorrow to public success. Ameche had no tabloid scandals of criminal or abusive nature, but he was politically and socially outspoken in ways that sometimes alienated colleagues. His biggest professional disappointment may well have been projects that collapsed in development despite his stature. He died on December 6, 1993, at 85 at his son's home in Scottsdale, Arizona, of prostate cancer at age 85. At death, his estate and reported net worth were modestly substantial by classic Hollywood standards, commonly estimated around $5 million, comprised of film royalties, real estate, and memorabilia. His monetary legacy remains dwarfed by the cultural one, an actor who bridged radio, studio, cinema, TV, and a late career revival, yet whose private life kept enough friction to remind us that public applause rarely smooths all domestic cracks. Eddie Murphy was born on April 3, 1961, and his journey from the streets of Brooklyn to global superstardom is a story of meteoric success, raw talent, and a penchant for courting controversy that made him equally adored and criticized. Bursting onto the scene with Saturday Night Live in the early 1980s, Murphy became a household name before his 22nd birthday, redefining American comedy with razor-sharp wit, boundless energy, and an unfiltered voice that tackled race, politics, and popular culture with fearless honesty. By 1988, at the age of 27, he cemented his place in pop culture history with his iconic role in Coming to America, a film that showcased his ability to blend charm, humor, and social commentary in a way few could match. However, with fame came its fair share of scandals. Throughout the late 1980s and 1990s, Murphy's personal life became tabloid fodder, marked by whirlwind romances with models and singers, messy breakups splashed across gossip columns, and an infamous 1997 incident when police stopped his car with a transgender sex worker inside. Murphy maintained the encounter was a misunderstood act of kindness, but the story lingered, reflecting the complicated relationship between his public persona and private life. Behind the scenes, Murphy's perfectionism often earned him a reputation for being demanding and at times difficult on set. Financial disputes occasionally surfaced, reinforcing his image as a shrewd businessman intent on guarding his entertainment empire. After dominating the 1980s box office with a string of hits like Beverly Hills Cop 48 Bringers and Coming to America, Murphy's career experienced ups and downs, including periods of retreat from the spotlight. In recent years, his return to stand-up comedy and the announcement of sequels to some of his classic films have reignited debates about whether he will resurrect the politically incorrect, boundary-pushing humor that initially made him a legend and lightning rod in the comedy world. Now at 64 years old in 2025, Eddie Murphy remains one of the most unforgettable forces in entertainment, a man whose brilliance and controversies remain deeply intertwined, shaping the landscape of modern comedy and pop culture. Arcenio Hall was born on February 12, 1956, and played Semi and several other roles in Coming to America in 1988 at age 32. The film showcased his comic elasticity, quick-change characters, sly timing, and ability to undercut royalty with the dirt of real life, and it prefaced a meteoric rise to cultural power with the Arcenio Hall Show, which transformed late night by centering Black voices, hip-hop artists, and a younger, edgier audience. His childhood in Cleveland, son of a Baptist minister raised in a working-class household after his parents' divorce trained him in the improvisational survival skills he later used onstage humor as armor, performance as escape. Yet the arc of his success carries bruises. The cancellation of his pioneering talk show in 1994, amid corporate reshuffles, affiliate defections, when Letterman moved to CBS and controversial booking choices, notably a fraught Louie Farrakhan episode, was a professional gut punch that truncated a cultural moment and left Hall combating industry politics and shifting tastes. Personal controversy has been less about substance than rumor. In 2016, he sued Sinead O'Connor for defamation after she publicly accused him of supplying drugs to Prince. She later apologized and retracted the claims, and Hall moved to dismiss the suit, leaving a stain of gossip that was publicly walked back but not easily forgotten. He also weathered an earlier sitcom cancellation in the 1990s amid reports of script difficulties and struggles, remembering lines failures that have been discussed in trade press as evidence of the merciless churn Hollywood meteors face when they try to shift formats. At 69, he is less omnipresent than in his heyday, but remains a respected figure. He has returned to Television One, Celebrity Apprentice, and continues to make selective appearances. Estimates put his net worth in the ballpark of $30 million amassed from talk show syndication appearances, production deals, and intellectual property. Morally and culturally, his legacy outstrips the ledger he helped remake late night and opened doors for acts and voices that mainstream TV had long ignored, even as industry politics and rumor sought at times to diminish him. Paul Bates was born on December 24, 1958, and quietly carved out a career that, while maddeningly underappreciated by mainstream Hollywood, left a lasting mark on those who valued integrity and sharp comedic talent. His breakout role as Oha at 30 in the 1988 film Coming to America placed him firmly in the pop culture landscape, but despite that success, Bates continued to face the challenge of being pigeonholed into narrow stereotypical roles. Before Hollywood called, he honed his craft in the gritty comedy clubs of New York City, where his improvisational quickness and fearless tackling of racial stereotypes won him both fans and foes. Throughout the 1990s, Bates made difficult choices to uphold his principles, frequently turning down roles that relied on lazy caricatures of Black men. This uncompromising stance came at a cost. Work became sporadic, and financial pressures mounted. Stories circulated about a fiery confrontation with a prominent sitcom producer, where Bates allegedly walked off the set rather than deliver a line he found offensive. Although the details remained unconfirmed, the tale only reinforced his reputation as someone who refused to sacrifice his dignity for a paycheck. Off-camera, Bates was a study in contrast. He shunned the limelight, avoiding red carpet events, and rarely giving interviews, preserving a fiercely private personal life. Yet in intimate circles, he was the heartbeat of every gathering, singing soul classics with passion, roasting friends with razor-sharp wit, and effortlessly delivering Hollywood gossip that left everyone in stitches. Financial ups and downs punctuated his journey, and at times close friends quietly organized benefit events to help him through dry spells. Despite these hardships, Bates's refusal to compromise his artistic integrity remained unwavering. He chose principles over easy fame and steady paychecks, crafting a legacy defined not by blockbuster stardom, but by courage and authenticity. Now in 2025, at the age of 66, Paul Bates stands as a rare figure in Hollywood, a man who navigated the industry on his own terms, inspiring those who saw beyond the glitz to the genuine talent and conviction beneath. Garcelle Beauvais was born on November 26, 1966, and played the Rose Bearer in Coming to America in 1988 at age 22. On screen, she registered as a blink and you'll miss it flash of poise and beauty, but the seed of that radiance was forged in exile and survival. Born in Saint-Marc, Haiti, the youngest of 8 children, and uprooted to the U.S. At 7, she learned English from television and learned early that charm could be currency. Her childhood was threaded with scarcity and the quiet humiliation of fitting into a new world. She has written about nights, worrying over rent, and the discipline of a mother who worked to keep the family afloat. Her modeling breakthrough as a teenager with Ford thrust her into glamour. Yet the backstage reality was hard-edged, early runway hunger, being sized up and dismissed for not being the right look, and the quiet internal work of translating adolescent shame into professional polish. Career highs came soap and sitcom work, a steady climb to Los Angeles television, The Jamie Foxx Show, and major studio credits, but so did brutal betrayals behind closed doors. The most public rupture arrived when her second marriage to CAA agent Michael Nylon imploded after she discovered a 5-year affair. Beauvais famously emailed his colleagues in 2010 to expose the infidelity, a move that detonated in tabloids and led to a messy, highly publicized divorce finalized in 2011. She has been frank about how that wound splintered trust and left her parenting alone while rebuilding a career. It also catalyzed the candid memoir she released years later, where she pillories patterns of pleasing others and reveals the private fury beneath the glamour. Stability returned through reinvention. Actress, entrepreneur, reality star, author, and mother of 3, and her public persona now blends polish with hard-won vulnerability. At 58, she remains active in TV and business, a vocal advocate for diversity. Financial estimates place her net worth around $8 million, accumulated from decades of acting endorsements, book sales, and product lines. Victoria Dillard was born on September 20, 1967, and appeared as a bather arc dancer in Coming to America in 1988 at age 21. Her brief presence in that film hinted at an elegant, disciplined performer. Years earlier, she trained with Dance Theater of Harlem and cut her teeth in stage touring. But the girl who moved gracefully on camera carried a quieter, tougher story. Growing up in New York City, she was often overlooked and mocked for not looking or sounding like the narrow Hollywood ideal. She learned to conceal hurt behind professionalism and to rehearse diction until her voice sounded neutral to casting directors. That disciplined reserve helped build a respectable career, memorable television work culminating in a 4-season run on Spin City, a striking film turn opposite Denzel Washington in Ricochet, and steady guest roles. But life dealt a devastating card in 2006 when she was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. The diagnosis, which she kept private for a time out of fear it would derail offers and subject her to pity, became the axis of a new life. She pivoted from pursuing every role to fighting for research equity in treatment and representation of women with chronic illness. Personal headlines are sparse because she fiercely guarded her private life, though public records and interviews note a relationship with Lawrence Fishburne in the 1990s that ended without fanfare. Friends later describe her as someone who shouldered heartbreak privately, then turned outward to advocacy. Her biggest professional heartbreak is not a single tabloid scandal, but the slow vanishing of roles as symptoms advance, the invisible failure of a body that once obeyed every cue, now betraying timing and movement essential to her craft. Dillard is an advocate now, a woman whose identity shifted from actress to activist. At 57, she lives a quieter life focused on awareness support and creative writing, balancing limited public appearances with medical care. Financially, she has kept a low-profile. Industry estimates put her net worth around $2 million, modest relative to Hollywood stars, and largely derived from past acting income and speaking engagements. Ralph Bellamy was born on June 17, 1904, and over the course of a career that spanned more than 6 decades, he became a defining figure of classic Hollywood. Known widely for his polished demeanor and the gentlemanly roles he portrayed on screen, Bellamy's public image was that of a refined, charming man, the very epitome of class and sophistication. Yet behind the debonair smile and impeccable manners lay a far more complex individual. His entry into the film industry came at a time when talent alone was rarely enough to ensure success. Navigating the treacherous social and political landscape of Hollywood was just as critical. Throughout the 1930s and 1940s, Bellamy hosted some of the most glamorous gatherings in Beverly Hills, where the creme de la creme of the entertainment world, from studio executives and actors to politicians, mingled over fine whiskey and cigars. These events were not merely social occasions, but arenas for deal-making and power brokering, with Bellamy often at the center, leveraging his connections to shape careers and protect allies. While Bellamy was frequently typecast as the affable nice guy who never quite won the girl, a role that became his trademark in numerous romantic comedies, he privately harbored frustration with the limitations it imposed. He longed for roles that allowed him to explore more nuanced, multifaceted characters, and often clashed with directors and producers who underestimated his range. Financially, Bellamy's lavish tastes sometimes caught up with him. His passion for classic cars, bespoke European suits, and a notorious gambling habit often led to precarious money situations. Industry insiders recall a weekend in the 1950s when his losses at the casino reportedly equaled an entire year's salary. Bellamy's career extended well into his 80s, with one of his final notable appearances being in the 1988 film Big when he was 84 years old. Ralph Bellamy passed away on November 29, 1991 at the age of 87, leaving behind a legacy marked by both his iconic screen presence and the complex, sometimes contradictory man who had navigated the ruthless world of Hollywood with both charm and cunning. Montrese Haggins was born Annie Montrese Haggins on March 5, 1924, and played Grandma Jenks in Coming to America 1988 at age 64, delivering the warm rye elder presence that grounded the film's neighborhood with heart and comic timing. Grandma Jenks is the kind of small role audiences cherish because it feels lived in part of a larger unseen life that the movie only hints at. Haggins's on-screen affability grew from a real biography that began in a modest religious household in the segregated American South, where being the daughter of an Episcopal minister shaped her moral compass, but also exposed her to economic and social prejudice. Childhood marked by thrift, the necessity of service to family and church, and the habit of hiding private pains behind a smile. She spent much of her adult life as a school teacher before transitioning to a late-blooming acting career. That move was itself an act of reinvention, but it came with frustrations, roles lost in development series that never materialized, and the ineradicable typecasting of older Black actresses into grandmother or church lady boxes. Publicly, she avoided scandal. Privately, friends reported she was fiercely protective of her dignity and intolerant of disrespect in an industry that often exploited older actresses. Her greatest professional heartbreak was the slow attrition of meaningful parts that might have allowed her to headline rather than be treasured as a character player. In private life, she cultivated philanthropic ties. She served on boards and supported causes, and later owned multiple properties, retiring to an antique farmhouse in Pennsylvania while maintaining homes in California. Those real estate holdings and decades of TV and film residuals gave her a comfortable nest egg by the time she left the screen. She died on October 24, 2012 in Rancho Palos Verdes at age 88. Public records confirm a long life of steady work, community service, and modest material comfort, with an estate based on property holdings and long-term royalties rather than blockbuster movie paychecks, a testament to a late-found second act that kept dignity, craft, and private convictions at its center. Thank you for joining us on this nostalgic journey through classic television history. If you enjoyed learning about the cast of Coming to America and where they are now, Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe for more vintage Hollywood retrospectives, and share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing your memories and suggestions, so let us know which TV show or movie cast you'd like us to feature next.